So this is the Infinix Note 30 VIP. It's a new mid-range phone that cost 13,999 pesos for the sole variant of 8GB RAM and 256GB storage. Okay, before we start, this is a new format for this channel, so usually you see me reviewing phones on a long-term basis. But since there are a lot of phones getting released every month, I want to review some of those phones that I think still deserve some spotlight, but on a shorter term basis. So we have this kind of video, which is a 1 week or 2 week review of a phone. Obviously, I won't be able to review these phones on a long-term basis, but if you still want me to review these phones, for example this Note 30 VIP, then just let me know in the comment section. You will still see the same content here, so I'm going to be discussing the price, the design, the performance, display, everything. So again, I have here the Infinix Note 30 VIP and I've been using it for almost a week now, and with a VIP name tag, I think Infinix has given us a very generous unboxing experience here. So you have your usual manual and paperwork, but here you have a tempered glass screen protector for free. And then you have that pre-installed plastic screen protector that's already on the phone itself. And then you have this 15-watt Qi wireless charging pad from Infinix, effectively making this phone the cheapest wireless charging phone that I have ever seen by far. This phone does support up to 50 watts wireless charging. You do have to spend more if you want to take advantage of that 50 watts, but 15 watts so far has been good enough for me. This one does support 68 watts fast charging, which can get you from 0 to 80% in just 30 minutes, and if you do intend to use a 50 watt wireless charger, you can get from 0 to 50% in just 30 minutes. More on those later. For now, I want to talk about the design. So you can have this in two colors, Magic Black and Glacier White. But for the name Glacier White, this one looks more like a Glacier Blue. Well, you can see the back panel is made of glass and it is an frosted finish, so it won't attract fingerprints that much. And if you'll notice on the sides, it's a squared frame, but it's a plastic frame with a metal-like finish that's also in blue, which is a nice touch. Actually, I am digging the color here. I'm not a fan of that light blue color on the back, but I do like the accent of the side rails going with a blue hue instead of having a regular silver finish. Yes, it is a magnet to fingerprints, but still, I think this one is a pretty phone. It's not that hefty, it does have some weight to it, but not too much. It kind of feels hollow, but again, it is on the lightweight side. Here's the camera cutout. It's not technically a cutout, it's more like an embossed camera hump, which is kind of neat. It's the first time I've seen this kind of design on a phone. And then you have the cameras. You have the 108 megapixel camera, and you also have two 2 megapixel sensors, one for macro and one for depth. And then you have these LED flash to complete that quad camera like setup. It's not necessarily a quad camera, as you only have 3 cameras here. You don't have an ultra wide, which is unfortunate, but I think it's starting to become a norm with this phone, so we're kind of throwing away ultra-wide sensors. But then again, you do have that 108 megapixel camera. So you have that power button, and then you have the volume rocker on the side, and down below you have a 3.5mm headphone jack, a USB-C port, and then the dual speaker with JBL tuning. So these speakers are tuned by JBL, so you should expect good sound quality later on. Oh yeah, and you do have an expandable storage, so you can expand the 256GB internal storage with a up to 2TB of microSD card. So basically that's the design, and I like it, I have no complaints here. But before we move on, this design reminds me a lot of the Camon 20 Pro 5G, and it's not surprising given that they are under the same company. Okay, so enough about the design, let's talk about the display. So this is a 6.67 inches Full HD Plus AMOLED display. It's capable of up to 900 nits peak brightness, but you do have to turn on high brightness mode in display settings to take advantage of all those nits. Although it kicks in when you're out and about on a sunny day, this panel is bright enough for whatever content consumption you're into, whether you're gaming or you're watching movies, watching Netflix, watching YouTube videos. This display has more than enough brightness for almost every user. You do have that 120Hz refresh rate, and you can save battery by choosing 90Hz or just choosing the regular 60Hz, or you can have the display auto switch between 60 and 120, but it will look like your phone is stuttering, so my recommendation is just to use 120Hz all the way. Although this is an AMOLED display, it's not as punchy as other AMOLED phones that I've seen from other companies. However, you do have the option to enhance the color of the display to make it more appealing or more saturated if that's what you're into. Now, I've used this for gaming. watching Netflix videos, YouTube. This phone is capable of 4K 60 playback on YouTube, by the way. If you're one of those people who wants to play back 4K on a small screen, that's possible here. But for an AMOLED display, I wouldn't say that this is the best AMOLED panel at this price range. I think there are better AMOLED displays, but again, I'm not saying this is a bad display. This is capable of 1 billion colors, 120Hz, and it's a very bright panel considering the price point. Not a lot much to complain here, to be honest with you. It's just not the best if you're a stickler for displays. There is a sufficient amount of bezels around the screen. Again, just like the Camon 20 Pro 5G, they're not symmetrical, they're almost symmetrical, but the top portion of the display has a slightly thicker bezel than the chin, which is just fine, it's not a big deal. Oh, and by the way, you have an under-display fingerprint scanner. The speed is okay, but the accuracy can be a hit and miss sometimes. I would say this is a 7, 8 out of 10 in-display fingerprint scanner. It's not very fast, but it's not slow either. Okay, now we're on to the performance. So this one has a Dimensity 8050 chipset from MediaTek. So it's the same chipset from Camon 20 Pro 5G like I've told you earlier. It's running on Infinix's XOS software on top of Android 13. And this has 12GB of RAM, which is kind of mind-blowing for a mid-range phone to this day. But then again, you do have 8GB of RAM on most phones today, but this one has 12GB of RAM. You can set virtual RAM up to 9GB, which pushes the RAM up to 21GB, but I think that's a space eater. You don't really need an extra 9GB from the storage of this phone. The RAM, the original RAM storage, is still much faster than your regular storage. I've been using this phone without the virtual RAM or MEM fusion, and it's been working just fine. Just save your 9GB for other things like music or videos, because 12GB for a mid-range phone for the MediaTek Dimensity A50 is more than enough. And to give you a bit of a background, A250 isn't entirely a new chipset. It's actually a refreshed or rebranded version of the Dimensity 1200 from 2021. Effectively, it's a 2-year-old chip, but again, this 8050 was a flagship 2 years ago, and to see it on a mid-range phone 2 years later and still perform just fine, I hardly see any stutters here with this phone. I do like Infinix's UI more than Tecno's because this one feels a bit polished even with the baked-in features. Actually, I think this is similar if not identical software with Tecno's iOS. From the positioning of the icons, of the widgets, even the weather widget, even the notification center. They just rebranded some things, like for example, battery is not called battery in the settings, it's actually power marathon, and then from there you can see all the battery features or battery settings that you can play with. And speaking of battery, this one has a 5000 mAh battery capacity. And for the past few days, I've been getting around 5 to 6 hours of screen time. You can push it to 7 hours if you're not gaming that much, but this one can easily last you an entire full day or even more the next day if you're not a heavy user. So I think the battery life is great on this one, and some notable things in the battery settings, you do have AI Smart Charge, which trickle charges this phone to 80% and then fully charges it once you wake up in the morning, so it extends the battery life of this phone. And then you also have the option to reverse wireless charge because this is a wireless charging phone. You only have to turn on the toggle in the settings. I do think this phone lasts a bit longer than the Camon 20 Pro 5G despite having the same internals. Now for the performance. I've noticed that the Note 30 VIP performs better than the Tecno Camon 20 Pro 5G. As I said, we have the same internals, but this one has better heat management. It doesn't overheat or it doesn't throttle as much, and it doesn't heat up as much as the Tecno Camon 20 Pro 5G. I've played Honkai Star Rail in medium settings, high resolution at 60 frames, and after 15 minutes, like 80% of the time, I was playing between 45 to 50 frames per second. And although it throttles sometimes, it's not as often as the Tecno Camon 20 Pro 5G. I've also played Genshin Impact, and you can easily play it at medium settings, again 60 frames with small hiccups. And especially with older titles like Mobile Legends, PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, you'll have no problem running those games. I think the only bug that I found here is the picture-in-picture mode again, just like the one on the Camon 20 Pro 5G. The phone slows down when you have a video in PIP mode. There's definitely still room for improvement here. If Xiaomi or Redmi releases a Dimensity 8050 phone with MIUI, I would still prefer MIUI over XOS simply because of how polished and optimized MIUI is in terms of performance. except for those late notifications of course. As for the cameras, the 108 megapixel sensor is good enough. I was already impressed with Tecno's 64 megapixel RGBW sensor, but the 108 megapixel on the Note 30 VIP is just better. You get that strong bokeh effect without the need for portrait mode, but at the same time with better detail quality. Understandably, HDR is on the limited side, so you won't be able to preserve the details in the brightest and darkest parts of the image, but I do like the natural look here. The Note 30 VIP is also better in low light conditions than the Camon 20 Pro 5G, although not by a huge margin. Infinix still needs to do better in low light imaging. There's no OIS here, unlike on the Camon 20 Pro 5G, but at least the quality of the videos, whether it's 4K or 1080p, is better, albeit shaky. You need to toggle on the ultra steady mode just to have a decent stabilized video, and as per usual, it's only available in 1080p at 30 fps. The 32 megapixel selfie camera is also quite good. It can record up to 1440p at 30 frames without stabilization, and you have to toggle on ultra steady mode to activate stabilization, which gives you a stable video but with a significant crop. The selfie photos are on the soft and pale side, so some minor adjustments are going to be needed before you post them to socials. Overall, this set of cameras has better potential than Tecno's Camon 20 Pro 5G. It's still not as good as Redmi's, but like Tecno, it has something special going on. The speakers though are louder, have more depth, clearer, and with a bit more bass than the Camon 20 Pro 5G, and that's largely thanks to JBL's tuning. One downside to this integration is that you can feel the back of the phone vibrating really strongly whenever there's strong bass in the audio. It gets annoying and tiring after quite some time when watching a video in landscape mode, but with case protection, this should lessen the effect. That's basically the Infinix Note 30 VIP. It's probably the best value mid-range phone below 14,000, just right above the Camon 20 Pro 5G. There is a significant difference in price tag between the two, but I think it's worth saving more for the Note 30 VIP if you're in the market for the Camon 20 Pro 5G. And that wireless charging, man, it's nice to see that feature in an affordable phone in 2023. Not to mention the free wireless pad you get when you get this phone. That's it for this one. Drop a sub or like if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, until the next one, stay safe.